One quarterback ever. This was in Week 16 against Seattle. 400 passing yards, 3 touchdown passes, no picks against the team that finished with the NFL's #1 scoring defense. That was Stafford Week 16. Never been done. And I've said if he wins another Super Bowl, I will put him 1 spot ahead of Aaron Rodgers all time, and that sounds kooky. I think Aaron Rodgers, 11th or 12th best quarterback ever, I would insert Stafford 1 spot ahead. There are no great movies with choppy endings. Go look at the last 5 years between the two. Stafford has been on a heater, 7-2 in the playoffs, multiple Pro Bowls, probably wins the MVP, more touchdowns than Aaron, higher passer rating, easily the better quarterback. But bigger than any stat is this. Aaron in his prime, in well-run Green Bay, only had 1 great playoff run. 1 in his prime. He was 1-4 in conference championships. Stafford, late prime to out of his prime in just 5 years, is on his 2nd. There's no other way to put it. Stafford was born into a dysfunctional family in Detroit. The minute he was adopted by the LA Rams, he has been significantly the better quarterback. All he needed was grown-ups in the building. Add this, too, which feels very Elway, Brady, and Mahomes. Matt Stafford, of his 7 career playoff wins, 5, he's had game-winning drives in a very short period of time. How many would he had if he had 12 good years? Aaron, in that huge window in Green Bay, didn't even have 3.
Okay. All right. Look, I genuinely don't comprehend why we consistently structure discussions in this particular manner. I truly don't. I haven't even viewed the specific clip in question, but I was aware Colin Cowherd had addressed a topic concerning Matthew Stafford and what this moment signifies for his legacy. I hadn't had the opportunity to formulate my own recorded response, so these thoughts have been percolating for hours. Ultimately, this is a reiteration of my profound admiration for Matthew Stafford, how exceptional and uniquely talented I believe he is. However, the framing being employed now compels me to present a counter-argument. I intend to lavish praise on Matthew Stafford subsequently, discussing what all of this signifies for me personally regarding his career. That segment will be overflowing with unequivocal, effusive positivity, because I hold the genuine conviction that Matthew Stafford is an elite, special, magnificent quarterback, by any descriptive terminology you wish to apply. Yet, the narrative currently being constructed is frankly absurd. Let's examine the context. Aaron Rodgers had Mike McCarthy as his head coach. One might argue about the well-run nature of the Green Bay Packers organization, yet you yourself have acknowledged their historical struggles in attracting major free agents. To secure their Super Bowl victory, they needed to externally acquire transformative talents like Von Miller and Odell Beckham Jr., who became massive, pivotal contributors. Furthermore, they had the benefit of a Triple Crown-winning receiver in Cooper Kupp and the offensive mind of Sean McVay. No rational observer would conflate Sean McVay's schematic brilliance with Mike McCarthy's coaching philosophy. The distinction is monumental. Regarding a quarterback's aging trajectory, the analysis focuses on the last 5 years. Within that span, Aaron Rodgers suffered a torn Achilles. He is also older than Matthew Stafford and has subsequently been tasked with carrying teams like the New York Jets and the Pittsburgh Steelers. If we wish to reference Rodgers' accomplishments in Green Bay, we must also ask, what have the Green Bay Packers achieved since his departure? Essentially, nothing. They secured a single playoff victory against a Dallas Cowboys team often perceived as postseason underachievers, coached by Mike McCarthy. The point is, the comparison becomes distorted. Both Aaron Rodgers and Matthew Stafford have historically ranked among the least organizationally supported elite quarterbacks in the NFL. The critical divergence is that Matthew Stafford eventually found, to use Colin's own terminology, his kingmaker in Sean McVay. It was within this partnership that his success skyrocketed. To now place the entirety of that success solely upon Stafford's shoulders is an exercise in absurdity. The evidence is clear. When primary weapons Puka Nacua and Cooper Kupp were injured, Matthew Stafford's performance notably declined. He had more interceptions than touchdowns and struggled to defeat bottom-tier teams like the Arizona Cardinals. He was demonstrably struggling. Having established that, I must state that a Super Bowl win's impact on Stafford's legacy is essentially meaningless to my evaluation. I possess the ability to disentangle the quarterback's individual talent from the collective accomplishments shaped by his coach and supporting cast. I expressed a similar sentiment last year regarding Patrick Mahomes, and that perspective has aged remarkably well, despite initial backlash. I argued that a potential three-peat, while impressive, wouldn't fundamentally alter my view of Mahomes' greatness, nor would a loss diminish it. If people were prepared to anoint him the GOAT based on a third consecutive win, then reversing that opinion based on a single loss is intellectually inconsistent. If you believed he was a brilliant quarterback in the GOAT conversation, that assessment should remain stable irrespective of one game's outcome, especially when facing a superior roster, as was the case against the Eagles. By that same logic, I do not hold the Detroit Lions era against Matthew Stafford. However, we cannot ignore the objective reality. He did not win a playoff game there across 3 appearances. It wasn't until his union with Sean McVay that his playoff fortunes transformed. Let's not forget, Sean McVay reached a Super Bowl with Jared Goff. What has Mike McCarthy accomplished without Aaron Rodgers? The answer is nothing. This underscores that the Rams' success is as much about organizational excellence and coaching as it is about quarterback play. I have consistently asserted that had Matthew Stafford been paired with Sean McVay from the inception of his career, we would likely be discussing an Andy Reid-Patrick Mahomes type of dynasty. Stafford could very plausibly be in the GOAT conversation. I've voiced this opinion for years and reiterated it throughout this and last season. However, I find myself having to emphasize it more strenuously because the public discourse keeps adopting an increasingly extreme, unbalanced viewpoint. This, in turn, forces me into the role of a counterbalance to these overzealous Stafford takes, which then leads to accusations of being a hater. Nothing could be further from the truth. I have been unequivocal. The coach-quarterback duo I trust the most in the NFL is Stafford and McVay. My position cannot be clearer. But to then engage in statistical manipulation and comparative analysis with Aaron Rodgers is bewildering. Stafford has operated within an ecosystem featuring Puka Nacua, Cooper Kupp, and Sean McVay. What are we even debating? Seriously, what is the core of this argument? Rodgers, for a significant period, worked with Matt LaFleur, a great coach in his own right, but a first-time head coach navigating a learning curve. Didn't Rodgers also win multiple MVP awards during that tenure, even after the organization had drafted his eventual replacement in Jordan Love? And yes, I would unequivocally state that Matthew Stafford is a superior leader and teammate. The fundamental issue is the ridiculous nature of these comparative conversations. I am perplexed by the media's current all-in, double-down approach on Matthew Stafford's legacy. I genuinely don't understand it. For me, the legacy impact of winning or losing this Super Bowl is irrelevant. In my view, Stafford will always be perceived to some degree as a victim of the Detroit Lions' historical futility. Whether he secures the second ring, akin to Peyton Manning's late-career Denver triumph, doesn't radically alter that foundational narrative. Manning was a diminished player during that Broncos Super Bowl run. He was not the primary reason for their victory, just as Tom Brady's final playoff loss with the Cowboys wasn't a definitive marker of his decline. Every athlete ages at a unique and unpredictable rate. One significant complicating factor with Aaron Rodgers is that his personality and reported difficulty to coach might have inherently lessened the likelihood of forming a symbiotic, career-defining partnership with a visionary like Sean McVay. That is a relevant variable. What have Matt LaFleur and the post-Rodgers Packers truly accomplished? Objectively, very little. They have consistently been low-seeded playoff entrants. I firmly believe in never using the final declining years of a quarterback's career as a definitive reference point for comparison. Everyone's physical decline is unique and occurs on a distinct timeline. To compare the last 5 years of one quarterback to another is a flawed and often misleading exercise. I'm at a loss. The core problem is that the prevailing discourse seems to demand nothing but 100% positive cheerleading-style commentary. That is not my role or my analytical approach. This frequently confounds listeners because they struggle to reconcile how I can simultaneously hold Matthew Stafford in the highest esteem, believing to my core that he is elite and that a Stafford-McVay partnership from day one could have yielded multiple championships, while also presenting the nuanced counterpoints I've just outlined. People perceive a contradiction, but there isn't one. I'm applying logic and striving for objectivity. The fact that I am not blindly biased is precisely why I can step back and say, hold on, let's tell the complete story, including the context around Aaron Rodgers. Rodgers' own persona doesn't facilitate sympathetic narratives, certainly. I referenced the Chiefs and Mahomes earlier to illustrate a principle. At this stage, I am fully cognizant of Matthew Stafford's brilliance. His greatness is not in question. Whether he manages to secure a victory in this specific Super Bowl does not dictate my assessment of his caliber. I do not expect even the greatest players to triumph every single time. I expect failure and imperfection. My analysis proceeds with the understanding that Stafford has had a far narrower window of championship opportunity compared to some of his peers. Therefore, whether he capitalizes on this specific chance or not, my perspective incorporates the reality that he has had significantly fewer high-leverage opportunities. Consequently, to prove his worth and exceptional nature within this compressed time frame, he would essentially need to maintain a near-perfect success rate, shooting 90% or 100% in championship scenarios. That is an unreasonable, insane standard. No quarterback in history has operated at such a clip. It's an illogical benchmark. If he were to win another Super Bowl in this concentrated period with the Rams, his championship rate would project to roughly 4 or 5 titles over a Tom Brady-length career. To suggest that merely elevates him above Aaron Rodgers is a miscalculation. Such a pace would force a conversation about him being a top 2 or top 3 quarterback of all time. In fact, one might be compelled to entertain the notion that there's an argument for Matthew Stafford being better than Patrick Mahomes, a conversation I know few are eager to have. Consider the context. Winning 2 Super Bowls in a 5-year window, 1 year of which was lost to injury, and another impacted by the necessary post-trade roster rebuild, a burden Brady never faced and Mahomes hasn't encountered. The Rams didn't simply acquire Stafford and enjoy 5 years of prime everything. They dealt with a rookie Puka Nacua, the retirement of Aaron Donald, the departure of Von Miller, and the exit of Odell Beckham Jr. This is not comparable to the stability Mahomes has enjoyed with Travis Kelce throughout his career, or the benefit of historically elite defenses and a defensive mastermind head coach that Brady had, especially early on. This is precisely why I encourage comprehensive, holistic conversation and caution against extreme reactions to nuanced takes. Here I am, delivering an extended defense of Matthew Stafford's circumstances and challenging the disproportionate burden placed upon him to validate his greatness. And yet, if someone hears only a fragment, they might conclude, this guy hates Matthew Stafford. I am demonstrably not downplaying him. One must be comfortable engaging with the full, complex narrative. Furthermore, Stafford is navigating all of this not in his absolute physical prime, but in his intellectual prime, a distinction that is challenging to parse for any quarterback. It's also impossible to know how Sean McVay would have managed a younger, more reckless version of Stafford, or if that would have required an adjustment period. We can only speculate. Those are my reflections. I am absolutely eager to hear yours. What are your thoughts on Matthew Stafford and the Los Angeles Rams? What would a second Super Bowl victory truly signify for his legacy? This all-important legacy conversation is, if I'm being perfectly honest, a somewhat silly construct. People recently discussed whether failing to break the single-season rushing record would hurt Saquon Barkley's legacy. Does anyone actively discuss that record now? Is Emmitt Smith a constant topic of conversation in 2026? We discuss Peyton Manning largely because he remains a television presence. Legacy, in many ways, is fleeting and contextual. Tom Brady is the GOAT, yet the discourse was immediately ready to pivot to Patrick Mahomes and potentially bury Brady had Mahomes won that 3rd consecutive Super Bowl. The same transient focus will apply to Stafford, Mahomes, Allen, Jackson, Rodgers, everyone. So, what does legacy even fundamentally mean in this volatile landscape? It often boils down to, what have you done for me lately? These are my preliminary thoughts. I read every single comment. So whether you agree with me or disagree, let's dive into some discussions. Let's have some spirited debates. But ultimately, let's simply enjoy the exchange of ideas. Please consider subscribing. We are building an amazing community here, and I would absolutely love to see you become a part of it. My goal is to create something we all feel genuinely connected to, something we're truly excited to participate in. I believe we are well on our way. Also, please don't forget to give this video a thumbs up, as it genuinely helps with visibility and the platform's algorithm. Thank you so much.